Hello, fellow cyborgs, and welcome to another mini wrap-up. I haven't done this in a while, so I'm all tongue-tied. I have 7 books to talk to you about that I have recently read, and a couple of them, quite a few of them, are audiobooks, and then I wanted to show you a book that I recently hauled and the books that I am really currently working on. In my most recent haul, I picked up The Haunting of Granite Falls by Eva Ibbotson, who is one of my favorite children's authors, and I read this and gave it 4 out of 5 stars. Characteristic to most of Eva Ibbotson's, she has very warm and welcoming, wonderful characters who are almost Mary Sue's in that they can be a little too perfect, but frankly, I don't mind that. And then her evil characters are like evil with a capital E and a capital V, so it's just highly, highly amusing. This one is all about a Scottish castle that ends up being transplanted to Texas and the ghosts who live there and what happens to them and to the boy who owned the castle and had to sell it because he needed some money. Hijinks ensue, and there is a really cute happy ending. I also finally finished listening to The Black Count, Glory, Revolution, Betrayal, and the Real Count of Monte Cristo by Tom Rees. I originally heard about this title from Maya Reed's. She read it last year, I believe, and it sounded really, really interesting. It's all about Alexandre Dumas, the man who is most famous for writing The Three Musketeers and The Count of Monte Cristo, his father's life. I really enjoyed this as an audiobook. I thought the narrator did a really good job of bringing the French language into the text and making it sound beautiful. He also had a very soothing voice. However, this did cover moments in not moments, but a lot of the French Revolution, which I have very little knowledge of, and it sounds chaotic and really backwards confusing. So there was a big chunk in the book where I just kind of disconnected because I didn't really know what was going on. But the parts where I could understand what was happening, like the background of what life was like for Black people in Haiti at the very beginning, was super fascinating. And I think that if I had a better background in the French Revolution, I would have given this 4 out of 5 stars, but as it stands, I gave this 3 out of 5, though I think that's mostly because I'm not the perfect reader for this book rather than the book not having merit and not being accessible. I also listened to Stay Sexy and Don't Get Murdered, a How-To Guide by Karen Kilgariff and Georgia Hardstark. I am a fan of the My Favorite Murder podcast and decided to pick up this book in audiobook format as an extended podcast. I enjoyed it. I ended up giving it 3 out of 5 stars. It was not what I was expecting. For some reason, I thought that this was going to be pure memoir, but it is kind of memoir blended with a how-to guide, using the podcast's favorite sayings as like chapters and sections. Overall, I enjoyed it for what it was, but I don't think it was what I was expecting. But I am in the process of re-listening to it because I want to talk to some people about it, and I read it so long ago that I want to kind of refresh my memory, and the re-listening is equally as enjoyable. I also finally finished Dutch Girl, Audrey Hepburn and World War II by Robert Mattson. This is a nonfiction about Audrey Hepburn's experiences in World War II. The book tells me that she was like famously mum on her experiences in World War II while she was alive, and I think most of that was due to her mother at one time before the war really kicked off being a Nazi sympathizer and not wanting her family to come under that scrutiny. I think Robert Mattson did what he set out to do in showing Audrey Hepburn in World War II and her experiences. Every chapter begins with one of the few quotes that Audrey did give regarding her experiences in World War II, though the bulk of the chapters I found were more about just the general Netherlands occupation rather than specifically Audrey. You do leave her and look at the greater events of the war for a bulk of this book, but there are instances where he communicates what her family was going through and what it must have felt like, and kind of uses his imagination to bring these moments to life in a way that could make people who are sensitive about historical fiction with real people in it kind of nervous, because we really don't know what these people were thinking or hearing or feeling at these certain times, and yet it's presented as if this is what actually happened. Overall, I find I'm kind of confused about the audience for this book. If you're coming in from purely an Audrey Hepburn interest point of view, which I'm like 80% Audrey Hepburn interest, 20% World War II interested, there are going to be sections that are dull to you because this is not 100% Audrey centric. However, if you want to read this book because you're interested in the Netherlands occupation by Nazi Germany, then you're also going to be kind of bored by all of the Audrey Hepburn stuff that's in here. There are, between the parts, you get a like a scene all about Audrey like away from the war in different parts of her life that have really very little to do with her experiences in the war. So if you were just a World War II buff, I think there are sections where you would just be like, I don't care about this person. Can we please get back to the like actual events? So it's a little odd in that the perfect audience for this book is a very niche sort of person who not only loves Audrey Hepburn, but also loves World War II. Overall, though, like I said, I feel like Robert Mattson did do a good job of blending that. I just kind of not sure who else this book is going to work for. I have been re-listening to the How to Train Your Dragon series by Cressida Cowell. I have the audiobooks narrated by David Tennant, who just brings these stories to life in a way that is delightful in every moment of every book. I have listened to How to Train Your Dragon and How to Be a Pirate so far, and they both are 5-star reads for me. I don't know what I would think about the book if I didn't listen to the audiobook, but David Tennant just brings these characters to life in lovable ways, and it, like I said, it's just absolutely delightful. I also had an impromptu reread that I did not schedule, Emma by Jane Austen. This was previously my favorite Jane Austen, and upon rereading it, I think it is still like in the top 2, though I remember enjoying the experience of reading Northanger Abbey more than I had rereading this recently, though I don't think I'm going to drop this down from a 4-star read. I still think it is a 4-star read. This time when I was rereading it, I kind of felt that maybe it was like 50 pages too long. There were quite a number of like full-on conversations that the reader was recounted like line by line that I wasn't 100% sure were necessary for like plot furtherance or character development. There are like relatively few conflicts in here. For the most part, it's kind of just what's happening in the village and the mischief that Emma accidentally, intentionally gets up to. And I felt like some of these mysteries that I already knew kind of felt dragged out a little bit upon rereading it, just because it takes so long to figure out blah, blah, blah sort of thing that it was like, I already know what's going on. Why is it taking so long? I think in another headspace, though, I would be delighted by the extra text and that it is a kind of more chunky of her novels. But yeah, that was kind of the impression I got. But I still deeply enjoyed most of these characters, Mr. Woodhouse and Mr. John Knightley, who could be really irritating for some readers. I just found really pleasant to listen to on the page. They were just a lot of fun. One of the main graces of Emma for me is that most of the characters I enjoy reading about, it's not like there's an evil character, or not evil, but just an awful character who enrages me when I'm reading it. Like in other texts that I've read, I feel like the characters who are supposed to be or could be enraging in here just amuse me. So that works. That's a huge thing for me when it comes to Austen's works. So yeah, Emma, 4 out of 5. I really enjoy it, and I think that you should give it a try if you haven't already. So that's what I've recently read, which hasn't cut down on my TBR all that much because a lot of it has been audiobooks that aren't taking things off of my TBR and rereads, but that's fine. I did recently have a birthday and was given this for my birthday by my mom. It came from The Deep by Maria Lewis. This is I think it's YA, but I'm not 100% sure, thriller, but there's also mermaids. It doesn't explicitly say that on the back, but that's the only reason why my mom picked this up for me. It is very underread, but highly rated on Goodreads, which makes me intrigued. And so I'm hoping, obviously, to get to this sooner rather than later so I can tell you what it's actually about. As far as what I'm currently working on, I am slowly making my way through my reread of Villette. I am buddy reading this with M.A. Anders. We are going at a very slow pace, but talking about every chapter, and it's been really enjoyable. It's also been really interesting to hear her thoughts reading this for the first time versus what I'm thinking reading this for the third time, believe it or not. So I am getting a lot more out of this reading experience, and it is a lot more enjoyable than my second and first reading experiences, which were kind of slogs for me overall. So hopefully we will finish this up in a couple weeks or so, and I will be able to give you my final thoughts on my third reading of Villette. I also, as you know, jumped on the Waterfalls of Stars read by Roseanne Alexander, and I finally managed to pick this up now that I finished Emma. This is so good. I am just transported every time I open this book up, and I find the prose to be poetic, but in a way that surprises me every time I come to it. I just kind of can't believe that this hidden gem is at this teeny tiny publisher that no one has heard about, and I'm glad that it has been highlighted. It has been on BookTube. It has been a really really pleasant read for me so far. I'm not very far in. I'm less than 100 pages in, but I'm hoping to read some more and finally tell you my final thoughts when I finally finish this. So yeah, that I think the hype is real. So those are the books I recently read, the book I recently hauled. Oh, I'm at 36 books on my physical TBR right now. I've definitely not been reading things off of my TBR the last few weeks, months. So I really intend to start chipping away at that currently. So anywho, I hope that you are having a nice summer or winter so far and that you are reading something lovely. Until next time, continue to be lovely.